Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're a first timer here, welcome. Kindly click the subscribe button. If you're an existing subscriber, thank you for being back here. In today's tutorial, I'll be showing you how to draft this indie Vicky James style that was recreated and with lace and Ankara fabric. So we'll dive right into it. But before that, I am here to tell you guys about a new series I'll be starting on here on YouTube. I will be taking a beginner's fashion course for people who are interested in fashion and have no idea how to go about it or cannot sponsor themselves. So here I'll be sharing my course outline on my Telegram group. Kindly check my channel description to see the link, and I'll also be sharing the course outline on there, and we'll be discussing further about the program. For today's tutorial, I'll be drafting the upper part, the corset part of that dress. So these are my basic measurements. My bust size is 36, waist measurement is 28, hip is 36, and shoulder is 14. The skirt part of this design is already on my YouTube channel, so kindly do well to watch it if you haven't watched it. I'll be starting off by marking out my borderline, and from there I'll start off with my shoulder measurement. My shoulder measurement would be my shoulder 14 divided by 2, and then I'll be using the standard neck measurement, the neck width, which is 3 by 3 for the front block. That's 3 inches for the width and 3 inches for the depth. My shoulder is going to be divided into 2, which is 14 divided by 2, and I'm getting 7 inches. To enable us draft this corset, we're going to be using a pattern block that has a shoulder dart in front. At this point, if you have a curve ruler, you use a curve ruler to connect these 2 points, the neck depth and the neck width together. But if you can use your free hand, go ahead to eyeball it and use your free hand. I'll go ahead now and measure my vertical measurements, which is my bust point is 10 inches, 10.5 inches from my shoulder, and for my chest line or armhole depth, I will be coming up 2 inches from my bust point, which is 8.5 inches. Then I'll go ahead now and mark my bust point, which is 10.5. I'll mark my under bust measurement, which is 14 inches, and I'll mark my waist point, which is 17 inches. All of these measurements are taken from the shoulder line. Then I'll go ahead to connect these points to mark out my horizontal measurements. After ruling out my vertical and horizontal measurement, I'll go ahead now to create our shoulder dart, and we'll do that by measuring the distance between the neck width and the shoulder point. And the distance between the neck width and shoulder point is 4 inches, and the midpoint is 2 inches. Now our dart for a busty person is 2 inches. For a less busty person, you are advised to use at least 1.5 to 1 3/4 inches. But in this tutorial, I will be using 2 inches regardless. So after marking out my 2 inches dart, I will be replacing the 2 inches I took for my dart after the old shoulder line. So these 2 inches now I've added will be used to form our new shoulder line. So I'll connect it to the armhole line, and then I'll come down 1 inch from this new shoulder line and connect to the neck width. I'll be trying to create the shoulder dart by measuring our bust span measurement, which is 8 inches. That 8 inches, I will divide it into 2 inches, and I'll mark it out on the bust line measurement. I'll mark out 4 inches. I'll come down my under bust measurement and measure 3.5 inches and measure the same thing on my waist line. So I'll connect with a straight ruler because those points are equal, and I'll connect from my under bust measurement to the bust span measurement and up onto our first shoulder, that leg. Then I'll connect my ruler from my bust point to the second shoulder, that leg. This will help us create our shoulder dart. Now we've created our shoulder dart. Remember, we also have a new armhole depth and a new shoulder line. So I'll be going ahead now to create an armhole curve from our new shoulder line into the new armhole. If you have a curve ruler, kindly use the curve ruler. If you can freehand it, go ahead. So from our shoulder depth, I'll be coming in half inch from the midpoint between our shoulder depth and our armhole. I'll be using a curve to connect those points. Next, I'll go ahead to create our waist dart. This waist dart will help us to get the bust curve to the shoulder dart. So for a smaller person, you can choose to get your waist dart of about 1 3/4, 1.5, 1 3/4 inches. For a bustier person, you can go in by 2 inches from your waist midpoint and your under bust midpoint. You go ahead now and connect these two lines together with a straight ruler because it's a straight line, and then you use a curve ruler to connect that point to your bust span measurement. This will enable us get the bust curve that will help us go further create a corset. The next step is going to be creating the cup shape of our corset. So to do that, we're going to be measuring the distance between the bust point and the under bust point. This is 3.5 for my measurement. And so that 3.5 from the bust point, we're going to be measuring it round on our pattern. If you have a compass, you can decide to use a compass to give you a more accurate line, but an easier and faster method is to just connect your 3.5 point from your bust point and measure it round to your under bust line. Then you connect the points together to give a more defined outline for the corset. We have outlined the bust span measurement. This circle now is called the bust span. This is the distance between your bust and your under bust measurement. Go ahead now to modify it. So on your bust line, you come in by 1.5 inch or 1 inch to accommodate more bust because you have more bust at the side. And so you connect this line to your armhole line and you connect it back into your under bust span. This is done to accommodate more bust on the body. With that, we are done with the shaping for the down part of the corset. So now we'll go to the upper part of the corset and do an extra tightening to create a more defined shape for your corset cup. And you do that by measuring half inch from your shoulder that line where it touches your bust span. You come out half an inch from that shoulder line, that shoulder that line on your bust span, half an inch on both sides, and you connect this point to your bust point measurement. This is the extra tightening we're going to do on our corset cup, and with that we are done with the corset cup. The next step now is to create our neckline, to create whatever style line we want for the neck shape. The first thing we do now is to determine our neck depth. So for me, from my shoulder point, I pick my neckline depth to be 9 inches because as you can see from the picture, it's a plunging neckline. From that neck depth, you come in on your pattern by half an inch or one half or 3/4 inches, depending on the style you want to create. From your neckline depth, now you connect it into your bust span measurement, that round circle we created before. At the top, now we do the same thing. We connect it into the bust span we created earlier before. From the extra tightening on the side of your pattern, you connect it into your armhole. You connect your corset cup into the armhole. After doing that, you have to cross check your pattern to make sure that when you sew your pattern, it's going to meet equally. So use your tape measure from your bust span. As you can see, it's equal 3.5 inch, or you can either close the dart at your corset cup and check to see that it meets up. If it doesn't, you can use your pencil to just blend it on both sides of your pattern. For your corset cup, I'm tracing out the part with you cut out with a marker. These are the parts you're going to cut out when cutting out your corset cup. Now that we are done with our corset pattern, we'll go ahead now to create the back waistline that the design has. So from our waist length, that's 17 inches we measured earlier, we'll be coming down our pattern 5 inches. You can decide to come down your waistline 4 to 5 inches, but I'm coming down 5 inches. And so from that, we'll be tracing out our waist span measurement. We'll trace it down, which is 3.5 from the center front. We'll trace it also the second line. To create that shape now, that V-shape waistline, all you have to do is just close this dot that you have on your waistline and your 5 inches depth from your waistline. Connect with a straight ruler and that's all. In order to create this back waistline, we'll have to get our waist bust and under bust measurement placed on our pattern. So I'll be using my waist measurement, which is 28 inches divided by 4 is 7 inches, and I'll be placing that on my pattern. Remember the dart we took in the middle, which was 1 3/4. I will be adding it also after the 7 inches, and then I'll be adding 1 inch for my joining allowance, the joining allowance of the dart, because if you realize, I'll be cutting that dart out. Under bust measurement is 30 inches. 30 divided by 4 is 7.5 inches. I'll be adding the 1 3/4 measurement to that, and I'll be adding the 1 inch for the dart joining allowance. For our bust measurement, I will be measuring my bust, which is 36 inches divided by 4 inches. Since there's no dart in the middle, I wouldn't be replacing any dart. I will just be adding the joining allowance, which is 1 inch. And so I'll connect these points, my waist point, my under bust point, and my bust point, all with a straight ruler to my armhole depth. So for this style, you will close the dart on your waistline and you connect from the 5 inches depth at your center front to your waist measurement on the side. You can use your masking tape to hold this dart in place because you'll be cutting this as one piece. If you notice in the design, there was no joining in that side. It is cut as one piece, either as on lace or with the nude fabric. The choice is yours depending on the design you're going for. Another thing worthy of note with this design is the plunging neckline. I will be correcting this neckline style that I chose earlier before. I'll be correcting it on the pattern. So we'll be coming down on our bust point towards our under bust depth, depending on how deep you want it to. I'm working with the picture that was already created, the style that was already created. And so as you can see on the neckline, the plunging neckline is almost on the under bust line. And so we'll be connecting that depth to the bust span we created earlier, that round circle. So this here will be our new neckline depth. The next thing we'll be going ahead to create now is the illusion on the sides of the bodies. So to get that curve now, we can decide to come down from our bust line by 2 inches, about 2 inches from our bust line. And then we'll be connecting with a curve to the center front mark. This part now is the lace fabric or the nude fabric part. Remember, you'll be cutting it as one piece. You're going to close that your dart on your waist and under bust line, so you'll be able to cut your piece as a one piece rather than having a joining. So remember to label your patterns. You label your center front, you label your side front on your pattern so you do not make any mistakes when cutting it out. You're going to cut this as one piece, remember, guys. So now we're done with that. Our yoke is going to be starting from the plunging neckline upwards. We'll close the shoulder dart as well, and you cut your yoke as one piece also. The yoke is also skin mesh or lace fabric, depending on whichever design you want to go for. On the yoke now, you can decide to have a dart on the yoke to tighten the yoke more so you do not have any gaping. This is optional. You can just cut out the shoulder dart or you can do this tightening I'm also doing here. When you do the tightening, you close your tightening on your paper and you cut your paper as one piece. We're done with our front pattern now. We'll be going into the back pattern. The back pattern is really simple. We'll just be creating the style line for the mesh and the fabric, and then we'll be creating our dart line. So on our front measurement, our dart line was 3.5 from the center front. We'll be doing that from the center back on the zip allowance. We'll be measuring that 3.5. Dart for the back is 1 inch allowance. So from 3.5, we'll measure 1 inch, that's 4.5 inch, and then we'll get the midpoint and we'll connect that midpoint to our shoulder length, which is about 9 inches from the shoulder line or 1 or 2 inches above the bust line. You connect your two dart legs to this point to your dart height. To get the style line for the back, remember in our front pattern we came down 2 inches from our bust line to get that curve. So we're going to be doing the same thing on our back pattern. We'll be coming down 2 inches from the bust line and we'll connect it to one of the dart legs at the back. You cut out this piece as one piece and you use it to cut out your mesh, your lace mesh, or your nude fabric. The reason for doing this is that when you join your front and back piece on this side, you want to make sure that both lines are matching, they are both equal, so that piece is cut with net or nude fabric. So when you join, the point where the nude fabric is on the front is going to meet the point where the nude fabric is at the back pattern. This is going to make your work look neat. This is the only design in the back. So the next thing we'll be doing is the lacing panel. So since we're going to be using lacing and not a zip, there's no need to go in from the zip allowance by 1/2 inch. For the lacing panel now, on the waistline, you usually go a standard of 1.5 to 2 inches, and then on the chest line or on the armhole line, you go in a standard of 2.5 inches to 3 inches, and then you connect these lines together in a V shape manner. It's a straight line, but the shape you're going to get is a V shape. This shape now is your lacing panel. You're going to be cutting out that piece. If you analyze the picture well, you see that on that lacing panel, there's an opening on the center back. So you go up from your armhole for about 1 to 2 inches, and then you connect it to where your lacing panel is going to start from. This small point now is going to be an opening. Down there is going to be our lacing panel, and the upper part is going to be our yoke for our back piece. And so you can decide to open up the center back there, yes, and put in your buttons or your hook and eye or whatever choice of fasteners you want to use. Another reminder for our front yoke, before we cut it, we're going to close the extra tightening we did. This depends on you. You can decide to use the initial shoulder that's that green line, or you can use the tightening, which is the black line, and then you close it and use your masking tape to hold it down so that you can cut your yoke as one piece. So you'll be cutting your yoke now from your plunging neckline. I'll be using the black marker now to indicate what you're going to cut out as your yoke, your plunging neck. So don't forget to label your patterns. And with that, we've come to the end of this tutorial. I hope it was beneficial to you. If it was, kindly click on the subscribe button and turn on your post notification, and also share the link to this video. Also leave a comment if it was beneficial to you in the comment section. Thank you.